And we're live.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Jitsi Community Call. I'm going to open the microphone right away to the team and ask if anyone wants to make any updates for the community, and otherwise we're going to move to question and answer. So, Jitsi Dev team, any updates you'd like to share with the community?
I'll just say that we're getting close to merging the new bridge. The only blockers we have are some things around Octo, and we're thinking about moving forward without those and just fixing those soon after. So the plan would be to merge this and then push the new bridge to beta Meet Jitsi, and we'll run there for a while, and then eventually we'll get onto Meet Jitsi and we'll be all that done. But we're hoping to do that as soon as we can talk to Boris about some Octo stuff. So that'd be later this week.
Thanks. One update from me. The week before, I managed to identify a long-standing bug with Jitsi where sometimes the detail list is not established. So basically, there is no audio in both directions between Jitsi and the video bridge. This is now fixed. I also been working on small UI stuff like notifying the participants who kicked who and notification who when you're remotely muted, who muted you.
Maybe not an update, but an addition to what Brian said, or more some clarifications. Yeah, I think with respect to balance estimations, we're at least as good as the old bridge. We don't have any improvements yet, but we feel confident about the current state that at least matches the performance of the old bridge. The Octo-related issues that persist and are kind of blockers are related to bandwidth estimations. We observe a non-ramp up to HD scenario when Octo is in use. I spent some time trying to figure out what was causing it, but Boris is more knowledgeable in that area, so he will be able to fix that more easily. Yeah, I think we're very good with in a good shape with the new bridge. That's what I wanted to share.
Just wanted to ask a question on Damien's update on notifications. Damien, do you know if these notifications are also going to show up on mobile right now?
Yes, there are.
They are?
Yes.
Perfect. And the same for Kick? Both Mute and Kick are showing there?
Yes, both.
Fantastic.
Adding to Damian and segueing into mobile, and what Damian actually implemented, we discussed, and the kick behaves slightly different. So it shows you a dialogue, hey, you've been kicked, and then you acknowledge it, and the whole conference sort of vanishes. So this way you're not surprised by finding yourself back to wherever you were without knowing why you're there. And segueing into mobile, we released the 2.2.0 SDK last week, and I'm hoping to push release 19.2 into both the App Store and the Play Store this week. There are a bunch of improvements there of note. The WatchOS app on iOS, a bunch of SDK fixes and little new APIs that we have added as a result of the integration work and what we learned here at 8x8. And one of the, maybe somebody listening to this call has run into a problem with the current SDK where you get an exception, a traceback when you end the meeting on Android. That is fixed now. So that's an update from our side.
Also for mobile, we are now working on an avatar update. So we are going to stop displaying randomly generated avatars. We are either going to use gravatars when it's explicitly set up by the user, or URL based, or a new one, which was not the case in the past, are initial based. So if you have a display name set or an email address, then we are going to display an initial an avatar convert generated from your name. And thanks for noting that, Amir. That's for web too. Yes, it's not only mobile.
I wanted to mention one issue that I'm currently working on to fix. So it turns out that our logic for what we are displaying on large video and what is actually selected, actually sent to the bridge to be selected as a on-stage participant from time to time, um, are not the same things. So currently working on trying to fix that, and probably very, very soon there's going to be PR about that. Um, so this problem may lead to various other problems like not receiving video from somebody, receiving wrong resolution probably, stuff like that.
Anyone else from the team wants to give an update? Okay, open mic. Questions and comments from the community.
Hello, everybody. My name is Artur. Can you hear me?
Yes, welcome, Arthur.
Thank you. I have two questions about Jitsi. We are testing Jitsi now and looking how it behaves in different situations. And my first question is about the behavior of Jitsi when one changes the network of the device. For example, if you go from 3G to Wi-Fi on mobile device, or on laptop you switch network Wi-Fi network from one to another. And I see that in these situations, Jitsi it doesn't work for me. I see that HTTP connection, this Bosch connection, is reestablished, and I see that somehow after some time, looks like Jitsi is reporting that okay, connection is reestablished, but it doesn't work. Still, audio and video is not sent and received. So my question is it known bug? And yeah, if yes, do you have any suggestions? Maybe somehow how to fix it, or it needs to be like debugged and fixed.
I personally remember we had worked on that and we had made sure it works. Have you
Yeah,
tried to?
Pavel, would you like to give a full description of what, or I can give it a try?
But that's not ICE restart, is it?
Well, okay, let me try to do a summary and then we'll see. So basically, what works today, Arthur, is that if you have, like, we are able to switch between all addresses that were available at the time when you were joining. So if you were joining from Wi-Fi on a mobile and then you woke out of the network, we will fall back to 4G as long as the 4G interface was also up while you were joining the meeting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see. Yeah, but yeah.
So for beyond that point, we also, so that's the part that works. The parts that will not work are moving from one Wi-Fi network to another, or moving from 4G. If you move back to Wi-Fi, we're not going to switch you back to Wi-Fi. And we did have a stream of work going there, but it hasn't made it in yet. Uh, and maybe Pavel, you want to comment there how far or close we are to it.
Yes. Yes, so actually this work did make it in, but I think it broke very soon after it was smashed, and then we just didn't have time to look into it. But I suspect we may revisit it soon, right, Emil?
Yeah, I think that was within a topic that we had planned for our team in the next couple of weeks. Um, so I guess Arthur, the takeaway is that we will be improving those situations in the next couple of weeks or so.
Cool. Thank you very much for update. And if you don't mind, I have a second question related to PERC. I don't know if I pronounce it correctly. It's tuple encryption scheme for media. And I have read that about PERC from Jitsi team, like some messages in internet that there was some work there. And I know that like in Chrome, it's still not supported. And the question is that, like, is it, what is the status of this specification in Jitsi? I mean, overall in Video Bridge, maybe, and also other parts of the Jitsi. And if we like don't use Chrome, for example, but use our custom built version of WebRTC, is it possible to enable it fairly easy, or more work there should be done? Thank you.
So yeah, PERC. The I believe that the work that was necessary in order to get a Jitsi video bridge to support a PERC session did make it in. Now, Brian, I don't know if any of that would actually work on the new version. Um, but yeah, why don't you? Did you?
Yeah, there's some of the areas like the core parts of the encryption are handling are the same as the old, but yeah, I suspect that there's quite a few
Well,
places.
it was specifically the frame markings, for example. The support for frame markings. Did we ever?
We don't do any parsing of. You're talking about the header extension?
Yeah, although now I'm suddenly remembering that was a contribution from Sergio, and now I'm suddenly remembering. I don't recall actually if he was working with frame markings or if he was doing something else. Uh, in fact, we don't have a good answer on that, Arthur. And so the way it was working was that uh, there was this other entity that implemented their own versions of Electron, and then they were able to successfully push through. It's a shame that Boris is not here because he was aware of. He remembered what was the changes. I would suspect he remembers what the changes were in Bridge to support that. I still don't recall if we had frame markings. Like, I'm on the fence. I think we did. Anyways, and I don't know if that would work out of the box with the new version. Boris should be back in a couple of weeks and he should be able to tell you. But the thing is that it's not going to be straightforward. However you do it, it's going to require development. It's not going to be an awful lot of development, but it will require that you ship your own version of Chrome, that you've recompiled WebRTC and Chrome, and that you have double encryption enabled in there. And so no, it's not going to be trivial. The way that this work is headed is that we're sort of waiting for WebRTC's new extensions that would let you override some of the RTP packets that are going out so that we can add such a layer of double encryption.
Okay.
That said, you can probably pull it off today without needing any specific changes in the bridge. I think it was very little the way that Sergio had implemented. Basically, everything we use from a VP8 packet is in its header, and you could do the same thing that PERC is doing but rather than encrypting the entire packet, you just need to encrypt the payload of the VP8 content, and then you should be good, and the bridge would work without any modification. I think that's the only way. And then in the future, you'd be able to override these things in JavaScript anyway. So we're sort of waiting for that before diving deeper. I don't know if that helps you in any way at all, but that's kind of the situation.
Yeah, we just just wanted to understand the situation, and you gave quite good overview. Thank you very much. Yeah, this was my two questions. Thank you very much again.
Thanks for stopping by, Arthur.
I just want to ask one little question regarding the first Arthur's question. I'm eager and working together with Arthur, and so I just want to ask you the first situation with the change in the Wi-Fi network. So will it be fixed on the new bridge or on the old bridge too? Just how do you think?
That's probably just client-side work.
Okay, thank you very much.
Although, Brian, can you confirm that the bit where we're able to switch to where we preserve multiple candidates with ICE, can you confirm that this is in the new bridge as well?
Yeah, I don't think nothing around that should have changed in the new bridge.
Okay, so then the answer is it should work the same in both.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, this is Paul. I have a question related to the API. So we're using the external API with mobile as well as on web. So on web, we're using the iframe. We've extended Jitsi Meet just a little bit, just added a few custom behaviors that we can call into, mostly just around being able to support a few custom data channel messages, like endpoint messages that we're sending, and specifically to JVB. And so my question, is we're having some issues getting the API to work within the React Native world. And so I think we have much more clarity around that now. So, obviously the React Native API doesn't use Hostess, it doesn't use an iframe. And, there were a few posts over the last few days in the community forums from our engineer who's working on this on the mobile side. It sounds like the crux of the problem is that app.conference, which is sort of app is this global variable, I guess, that is used on the web side. There's not, I guess, parity of in terms of how that works on the Android and iOS side. So I'm just trying to get a little bit more clarity as to like where we need to fill in the gaps. We'd be happy to sort of contribute back whatever changes we make if this is globally helpful. But if I'm understanding it correctly, it sounds like the conference, or the top level Jitsi Meet conference, is not used on the native side. It's only used on the web side, and that effectively really is just a wrapper around the Jitsi conference, which is used, and that wraps obviously like the Jitsi Meet and all that other good stuff. So yeah, sorry for being a little wandering question, but yeah, can anybody provide a little bit more clarity on how, I guess, how we can kind of fill the gaps so that we can, mostly the main thing we need to support is we want to be able to use, to kind of extend the Jitsi Meet side, the API, so that we can send some of these data channel messages and receive some new custom events, and also send some custom commands, essentially. That's it.
Just a quick question, because I'm not sure if I understood correctly. So the biggest problem that you're facing right now is that you mentioned something about some conference object that is undefined.
Yeah. Yeah, so app. So what we realized first was that the window dot app, all caps, where it's declared in a few places on the mobile side, it's just undefined in native land.
What do you mean mobile side?
Say again.
What do you mean by mobile side?
Like when we're running in iOS or Android. So basically we've been using the web Jitsi Meet API Jitsi Meet for a while, and that works great. And we extended that a little bit to support a few events and to support a few custom commands for kind of custom behavior we have.
Yeah.
And now we want to be able to make that work on the native side.
Yeah,
I get that. Yeah. Okay.
So basically, I have never tested this use case. And by the way, the mobile SDK is not a good option for you, or why are you using the external iframe API for React Native? Because actually, this is the problem. So I think the problem would be that mostly libjitsi mid has a lot of checks whether you're using React Native or not. So what I suspect is happening is that basically the library is thinking that we are using React Native and some stuff are not available, but at the same time, all the rest of the code is trying to, I mean, it's not expecting that it's the mobile version. It thinks that it's the web version. It gets kind of mixed up, but yeah, so the mobile SDK is not working for your case, or
Right. Yeah. So the mobile. So we got the sort of basics to work a while back. So we can obviously we use JWT, so we can get a conference to load, and we have some custom functionality outside of basically. I think the root of the problem is we're building this hybrid app, so there's sort of part native, just plain old iOS, and then the approach is we embed the SDK in the same way that the Jitsi Meet mobile app works, right? So that was sort of our goal. And on the API side, as far as just using Jitsi Meet as a SDK, we realized pretty quickly that there's far fewer events or commands supported. But a couple weeks ago we asked this, and that didn't seem like a real problem, right? So we got some pointers about like kind of how to go about adding those custom behaviors and events, which we've done. But now we're sort of at this impasse where, like I think the native code thinks it's running web, and we want to make it clear or fill in the gaps so that it works properly. And so the first thing we realized is that window.app, and app.conference and app.store, those are all undefined. And so we tried to kind of patch those up. Like we saw on the website where those things were getting set. So we tried to do something equivalent. I think the root of the problem is app.js is only used on the web. And there's a comment about how it should be index.js native and index.js web, but it's sort of app.js versus index native. And so we kind of clean those things up. But I think I'm still a little confused as to what is used on the native side versus not. So like is in React Native, is it not using libjitsi at all? Those things are just getting stuck.
So it
sort
is.
of replaced by.
So it is using. Just to confirm again, you're using the external API that creates an iframe, but you're using it with on React Native, right?
Right. We're not using the iframe, obviously. Like we're using the view, like a Jitsi Meet view and Jitsi Meet delegate. It just works like the iframe. Like in the comments, it says like there's a I forget, it's like the scope, the external API scope or something, because it can support, I guess, multiple views. So it has like an ID. We don't use multiple views or multiple instances of a view at the same time, but it looks like it works in a similar fashion. Like it's sort of it looks like the approach was to kind of behave similar to Postis, but we're not actually, native's not actually using Postis. It's using, and so I think that part all makes sense. But the message we got on the community forums was that the app.conference, so the actual top level Jitsi Meet conference object, which is the very top of the source directory, is not actually used. And that class, I think, just has sort of a bunch of this sort of high level logic, which then wraps, Jitsi conference and Jitsi room and all that other stuff. So
I think I replied to the GitHub issue.
yeah,
I think it was a GitHub issue, right? Hey. So I think the confusion comes from the fact that right now there are two things called external API which don't have equivalent functionality yet. One of them is used on web and the other one is used on mobile. Now, as for what gets used in web and what gets used in mobile, pretty much the rule of thumb is whatever is inside the React folder could be used on mobile. That doesn't mean it is, because, for example, there are components that don't have a place in mobile, so they're not used. Now, everything that is outside of the React folder is not used on mobile and will not be.
Okay.
Because it's the code that has not been migrated to the React sort of structure that then gets shared between both. So
I see.
So currently, App Conference or Conference.js is a thing that connects the Jitsi conference with other, like with events and the UI and updates and stuff. But part of the logic is inside the React folder because we're migrating stuff away from it. So for example, if you search for how do we handle, I think the event is called kicked out. When you're kicked out of a conference, you will see that it's been handled twice. Once in conference.js probably, and the other one in a middleware in base conference, because that's what mobile currently uses. And web has not been updated to use it yet because migrating away from conference.js is kind of a big ordeal because it's lots of moving parts in a single place, so it will take a little while. So
I see.
It is not like the way you might need to do this is you will actually need to do the same thing in two different places. What we try to do when this need appears, because it has happened to us too, is we implemented inside the React folder as features with actions and dispatching, middleware and everything. And then from the web, you can trigger this behavior because you can do app.store.dispatch stuff, and then you can like tap into what's on the React feature. And then once it's in the React sort of realm, you can then use it for web and mobile. And now, thanks to some work that Lenny did, he started migrating away some sort of handmade notifications that triggered events on the API to the external API feature. So it's features external API, there's a middleware there, and that one shows you how to throw React events or actually React actions into the iframe API as events. And then in mobile external API, we have the equivalent, but for mobile. It's not an ideal situation, I agree. But we try to make something that sort of resembles the Postis thing. It was not an accident. We eventually want to bridge the gap, but right now, this is the current state of affairs. So
I see. So this doesn't sound like it's a terrible situation. Like we just really need to.
No. It's like we have the same problem in a way. I mean, many of the things we just do them. We try to do them sort of quote unquote the right way. Let's say if we add them now, and then we make like the legacy part tap into the new one, so that we add the least amount of code into the bucket that will then need to go away.
I see. So when you say like do things two times, can you give me like an example? I mean, I guess the thing that I think will help the
So
most is just trying to wrap my head around like what do I need? What's the simplest path to get this to work? Because we don't really have a ton of additional
yeah, so
functionality. We just
this
need
kicked out stuff that Damian talked about
okay,
when he said he added a dialogue about, hey, you've been kicked out. This handles an event on the Jitsi conference and shows a dialogue on mobile and shows a notification on the web. Um, so this thing it's using both universes, let's say, and it shows you how you need to handle the event inside React folder, which is used by mobile only at the moment, and in conference.js for the React universe at the moment. So you can handle the event in both places and then decide what you want to do. When you arrive at the edge, so the external API for mobile in this case, then you'll see that we call this function send event. Then it arrives on native, and there, for example, we use some trickery on the Java side. We check if there's a method with we mangle the name. So if your event, for example, is conference underscore terminated, we search for a method on the interface called on conference terminated with Hungarian case. And on we do a similar thing in iOS to match like action names or event names with actual method names. So adding
got it.
one into the list shouldn't be like a huge ordeal, I think. But if you have like, I think the easiest here would be maybe put a reference to some work in progress thing with one of the events that you have, whatever it may be. Um, and we can try to sort of guide you through making it show up in both places or try to follow the flow because it's not super simple to follow, unfortunately,
Got it.
sometimes.
Okay. But it should work the same way uh, for for sending commands or like we actually what we really want to be able to do. I think the most core functionality is calling there's a send request method
Yep.
that's used on web, which is basically just like a generic wrapper that a lot of the commands use. So we want to just expose that for the time being, so that then we could just basically send anything, right? And then we could send data
Right.
channel messages and whatever we need to do. Is that
So on mobile, we don't have that.
Folks, I'm wondering if we could maybe take that to continue that on community. I just want to make sure that if there are other people on the call who want to ask questions, they
sorry?
get a chance to do that.
Oh yeah, sure. So yeah, we can.
Or maybe so if you wanted to wrap up.
No, I just wanted to say that while that requesting doesn't map to what we currently have on mobile, there is like a built-in event emitter kind of interface, which, for example, it is used in the mobile slash call integration feature to
Okay.
send events from native to the other one. But I may have missed some of the community messages, so why don't you send me an email and point me to one so I fish it. I've been
Okay.
on and off traveling stuff, so I may have missed some stuff. And I'll try to
Well,
give you
I
some details
responded
there.
to okay. Yeah, I really appreciate it. I responded to your last post on that thread. Um, so
Oh,
and I
okay.
can add to that. I can add that as well.
Okay, then it should be on my pending notification. I'll check it out.
All right, cool. Thank you so much.
No worries.
Thanks, everybody.
Any other questions?
Hi, this is Josh from Miami. I had a quick question with regards to almost a follow-on from what Paul was just talking about with regards to web views, support of WebRTC. It looks like Android might have some support. Is that maturing at all? Do you have any idea?
Josh, you went out and your voice started being very weird. I think there's a problem with your device.
Sorry. Can you hear me now better?
Not really. Like it's off and on. It's as
Okay.
if there's. Oh, now it's better. Want to try
All
that?
right. Sure.
You were great when you said all right, and then it's as if there's a connection problem on the microphone.
Okay. All right. No worries. I'll type my question in the instant messaging. Thank you.
Keep going. Keep
Okay.
going. Now you're fine. No, sorry.
Embedded web
I don't
view.
know if someone else is able to understand.
Anybody else having the same issue? Hello? No?
Yeah, I also having the same trouble as Emil.
Okay, no worries. Let me send my
While we're waiting for Josh to type his question, any other questions on the floor? Pablo, there was a. Okay, you saw that. Anything else?
I have a question if everybody else is finished.
Let's go.
It's Peter. How are you guys doing today?
Great. How are you, Peter?
Fantastic. Thanks. Okay, first an easy one, hopefully. Have you changed the picture or avatar that everybody sees on the Jitsi Meet? I noticed that some
You need
of
to
you
go
have
and create an account on gravatar.com, and then you configure an image to match your email address, and then you configure that email address in Jitsi Meet. And we go and fetch it from Gravatar. Gravatar.com, that's correct.
And you can change, for instance, you can add your picture there instead of an avatar.
Yep.
That site. Okay, I'll look into that. The next thing is when it comes to securing a name for a room, it's never exclusive, right? So let's say there's a room called 123. Anybody in the world could theoretically use 123 at any time, and there's no way of really controlling that, right?
Is your question with regard to this service, Meet Jitsi, or is it with regard to the software Jitsi Meet? Do you have your own deployment, or are you asking about meet.jit.si?
Well, both. I mean, we do have our own deployment, but it's just using the API, and so we call meet.jitsi from within our system.
Okay, so you are using Meet Jitsi at the back,
yes.
Right?
Yes.
So it's all about just making sure that you pick a unique URL. The easiest way to do that, especially if you've integrated that through the API, and if the Jitsi URL is not visible to your users, then the best way to get what you're looking for is to just use something like a unique ID, UUID, as the meeting name. And then you're pretty much guaranteed that no one else will have the same during the time when you're having your meeting. Meet Jitsi in and of itself does not provide other means of protecting a meeting, but if you think of it, like if you let's say that you take if you look at the UUID case, you can look at it as having the first several letters of the UUID being your meeting name and everything else being a password. So it kind of accomplishes the same thing.
Okay.
Right. And now if you have your own installation of Jitsi Meet, then there are additional things that you can do to make sure that no one else accesses that. But that requires extra development and
your own instance.
And I don't know.
All the code has to be on your own platform, right?
Yes, and then you do with it what you want. You can add prosody modules where you could basically configure not configure, but you can have plugins that give you where you code the behavior that you want to have. Every room is essentially a multi-user chat on prosody, so you can have whatever logic you like there for how those are accessed by everyone.
Okay.
But other than that, you should just be fine by picking a unique enough name.
Okay, and what about the password? So how is that? Can that be set in advance? So let's say I'm sending out a meeting notice to everybody with this URL on a certain date and time. Click this particular URL, right? But I want to make sure that there's a password connected with it. Can I do that now? Let's say a week in advance.
No, you can't do it, and I'm going to give you the same answer. If you're looking for extra security, just make your. Let's say you had eight characters password. Just stick that to the end of your URL, and it's the same in terms of security. It's the same protection.
Got it. And just ask people to keep this URL secret. Basically.
I mean, if you're sending them the password,
basically
they could leak that too, right? So.
I'm sorry.
If you're sending them the password, they could leak that too. So from a security perspective.
That's true. Yeah, it's the same thing. Yeah, you're right. Makes sense. One more thing with Jitsi Meet, when you disconnect, it asks for comments, right? And a rating.
Yep.
But is there a way that is there an API so that I can see what that rating and comments are? Because when the people are going to my meetings, most likely what they write there concern the content of our meetings rather than the technology itself.
Yeah, that's a valid question. The right way to do that, we're actually facing some of those similar challenges to that with our own 8x8 deployment. And the right way to do that is to detect when you're out of the meeting, when you're showing that screen, and just get rid of the Meet Jitsi window at that point and show them a feedback window of your own. And you can do that. Christo, would you like to summarize a quick way to detect the event that tells you you have arrived at that screen? The feedback window, basically what we're doing right now.
Disable it. Okay.
No, we're not. You're not really disabling it. You're basically detecting that it has popped.
Okay.
And then you remove the iframe and you show your own feedback window at that point.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Christo, would you please describe the events that would help with that?
So we don't have actually event for a feedback dialogue. What we currently will do is basically, I'm not sure if we have such a use case. Basically, you can detect whether you are actively in the conference or not, but we don't have a directly event that is going to let you know if the feedback is shown or not.
That's not okay.
At least as far as I know. So maybe I'm missing something.
I'm talking about the same thing we're doing right now, where we want to detect and communicate to the wrapper that your conference has ended and now you're in feedback mode.
Yeah, but so what we are doing is not that we are in a feedback mode, but we are trying currently to detect if we are actively in the conference. So what we are going to use is basically, if you receive the video conference left event, we are going to consider that you are not actively in the conference, but you can still may have some UI like the feedback dialog or maybe something.
So wouldn't that be exactly what we're looking for here?
So correct me if I didn't understood correctly, but so this is not practically related to the feedback dialog. So in the middle of the conference,
it was at the end. It was at the end of the meeting. We want to detect when the user is being asked to enter feedback, and just dismiss the window because the conference has ended, and then they will present their own feedback mechanism.
There is an event. It's called feedback prompt displayed.
Well, that's the event, but that wouldn't that event show also when you show the feedback in the middle of the conference?
Yep.
So once you hit hang up and you leave the conference and you see that, would they be able to see both conference left and feedback prompt displayed? Or would they just get conference left?
They would get both. From what I remember, that's what we did with Spot. Before the event existed, I'd have to double check, so please do post on the community forum or GitHub issue to remind me. But what we did on Spot was we got some kind of leave event, and then we had like a timeout, and if we weren't exited we assumed we didn't show feedback. But we added the feedback prompt display event so that on exit, we would have an explicit message that told us that feedback was displayed. So I think what we do on Spot is we use a combination of some kind of meeting left or hang up pressed and the feedback prompt displayed dialog. But yes, then that means you should just be able to leverage existing meeting left notifications to do what you want.
Does that help? Sorry, I didn't see who was asking the question.
Oh, it's me, Peter.
Peter, does that help?
I'm gonna, yeah, there's a recording for this, and I will feed that to my developer, and hopefully that will make sense to him. It's a little bit over my head. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. So theoretically, that is possible. What you're saying. Okay, that's good. One last thing, and that has to do with the name that people have here. I mean, you can change your name at any time just by clicking on it and change it from Peter to John or whatever, right? So
yes,
which means that there's no way of really verifying who people are. It's just who they happen to say they are at that time. But given that they have said something, okay, let's say ABC, isn't it possible to have some API that pulls that ABC out somewhere so that we can grab it and maybe associate it to something else if we want to?
So if you're using this as an iframe integration, you can actually set the name from the outside. And I believe you should be able to disable name changing. I don't know if anyone else from the team wants to comment, but I think you should be able to disable name changing through the iframe API.
Yeah, but the point is that when the user clicks on one of these people's names, let's say in the tile mode, you've got all these people and you see somebody and you click on George. Is there a way of extracting the name George so that we can use it somehow?
I think so. I think in one of the events, you have to check into the documentation, but probably the display names are also available through some events or something like that. But it's written in documentation actually. I think maybe on participant join, maybe you're receiving display name or something like that.
Participant join in documentation. So that would be in the API section?
Oh yes, yes. So there is a API MD, I believe in the doc folder, and basically everything available is there, and it should be pretty well documented with some examples and stuff. And yeah, so I'm not 100% sure because I have to check it, but if I remember correctly, maybe there is an event participant joined, and probably you can get display name, and display name changes as well through another event.
Yeah, because we have been successful in our system to put the name in there to be exactly the same as the username that somebody logs in with. So, but now being able to extract it, that's the problem. So if somebody clicks on the picture, we want to be able to extract it so that we can use it. I'll take a look again in the documentation, see what I can find. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.